Hi, everyone. I'm excited today to be joined by a dear friend. She used to teach me yoga when I was in Ontario, so for a good long stretch of time. My dear beloved Meenakshi, she's here joining me today, and we're going to have a fun conversation. Meenakshi, where are you today?
Costa Rica.
Thanks so much for joining in from Costa Rica. And I will do my best to read your bio. If I get stuck, help me out.
Sure.
Okay. Meenakshi, can we start off by actually can you tell us what Meenakshi is? What Meenakshi
sure.
means?
So it's the name given to me by my Indian spiritual guru. I got it in 1988, and it's basically another name for Parvati, who is Lord Shiva's consort in the south. There's a beautiful Meenakshi temple in the south. Meena is fish, Akshi means eyes, so it actually means having in the eyes of a fish, and that's how she's described. But the way he described it to me, well, first of all, I was a dancer at the time, and a lot of dancers have the name Meenakshi in India, in the south in particular, where her temple is. But it was interesting because he said to me, and when you give spiritual name, the meaning of your name, I find is very significant. And so I always felt like the meaning of my name was something to aspire to. So fish see with each eye, 180, 180. So their eyes see everything at once. So when he gave me the name, he said Meenakshi. Meenakshi has the vision of oneness. And I just thought it was really beautiful, and I was very, very happy to keep it. And then eventually I did a legal name change.
Ah, beautiful. Okay. Meenakshi, former co-owner and director of Downward Dog Yoga Center, first traveled to India in 1988 to study meditation and the philosophy of the Vedas with Swami
Shyam,
as well as other learned scholars in the Himalayas. She is a certified meditation and yoga philosophy teacher from the International Meditation Institute in
Himachal Pradesh, Kullu Valley.
Thank you. And along with her studies with her Pranayama teacher, Sri Sudhir Tiwari, has also completed an advanced Pranayama training with Sri O.P. Tiwari from the
Kaivalyadhama in Pune.
Thank you so much. She has been an international yoga teacher trainer since 1999 across Canada in the areas of yoga, philosophy, and Sanskrit, chanting and meditation, Ashtanga, Vinyasa yoga, Restorative Yoga, and Yoga Nidra. As practicing a Shiatsu Therapist since 1990, as well as an Abhyanga Massage Therapist, Meenakshi has a healing and informative touch. She has been trained in giving channeled readings in Choose Love Karmic Readings, light weaving activation, Reiki, and is currently in training in sacred earth and ascension rituals. She has been studying and performing Indian Classical Odissi dance, thank you, since 1995, and is very passionate about this form of dance as well as sacred temple dance. As a celebrated songstress, she also leads kirtan, a call and response chanting with her band Swaha, with inspired and musical compositions with her partner keyboardist Ron Reed. She has produced 5 CDs of Sanskrit devotional chanting entitled Prayers, Salutations, Vishnu's Dream, Bolo, Shanti Pulse, and her newest CD, Gone Beyond. And the website for that, which I'll post at the bottom of this video, is www.swaha.ca. Thank you so much for your time today, Meenakshi. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about what you're up to, what you've been experiencing this past year, how things have shifted for you, as far as your direction in life at this time. Let's get into all of it.
Where do you want to start?
Where do we begin? Maybe we should start with how your journey into yoga began. How did you get into yoga in the first place?
Sure. I was definitely a quiet child, and in some ways very empathic and sensitive. And I had a hard time, I think, dealing with my emotions when I was younger. And so it was sort of an inward, quiet seeker. So I started reading a lot of philosophy and whatnot, but nothing was ever really grabbing me. And then I backpacked through Europe when I was 16, and I ended up being given, basically, it was the transliteration of the Bhagavad-Gita, one of the beautiful sacred holy books in India, by my teacher, from a guy in England at a hospital, at a hostel in Greece. And he gave it to me, his transliteration, and I kind of went, whoa. And it really struck me. And I went to the ocean and I asked for a sign, and a whole bunch of different things later. I was like, I need to go and meet him. He's my teacher, and found my way to India. And I basically went to India and studied in India for a good part of 15 years, back and forth a little bit, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 9 months. And I lived at an ashram and studied really mostly yoga philosophy and meditation and Sanskrit and chanting. And not so much asana, but my background was in dance. So when I first came back to do some teaching in the West, and I started to teach meditation, nobody came to those classes back then. But because I was a dancer, it seemed that asana, like the actual physical yoga part of yoga practice, seemed more popular at that time. And it seemed like, people would come to those kinds of classes. So, yeah, that was kind of the journey of sort of coming back a little bit to the West years later. And then slowly, I started to practice Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga in 1995, very physical form of yoga. And that became very, very popular. But then after some years of people practicing that, then they started to open up a little bit more to the deeper internal practices of yoga. And then that's where, I was able to share more of the meditation and the philosophy and chanting.
That's beautiful. Meenakshi, when I began yoga after my separation. I kind of fell into it because a friend of mine at the time, for my birthday, she got me a 1-week intro pass to a local hot yoga studio at that time. And at the time that I decided to separate from my husband at the time, I basically took 2 garbage bags, threw in some clothes, and called my brother and asked him to pick me up. And that's how I left. And I also left my previous job at the time, which was in interior decorating. And so I quit job, left that life, and felt like I needed a fresh start. So the first week of the intro to yoga that I was attending at that local yoga studio, I went like 10 times. And I remember, so I was so broken. And I didn't know how to start peeling myself off the floor. But I knew that in the yoga class, everything that the teachers were describing on a physical level, like as far as, plant down your foundation into the earth so that your structure can rise up more fully and more strongly. I felt like it was all so beautiful and poetic. Like everything that they were saying, they were instructing and guiding and cueing was actually a metaphor for life, for my body, for how to rebuild myself. And that was when I became really intrigued with this practice. And this was probably, 14, 15 years ago. And then right then is when I decided to get into the practice of yoga, because it was the philosophy that actually spoke to me very intimately through the physical body.
Wonderful.
So when I think of that, then, because we're also doing a trauma series, our sister platform, or Jason's platform, Inspire Health Podcast, this is coming up a lot. And as far as even what does the body have to do with trauma? Like when you go into, when you're teaching postures, you know, the asana practice itself, and you're going from triangle to this posture and the next posture, how do you know that people are working more with just the physicality of the body? Like, what have you witnessed through the years of just as a teacher walking around the class?
Well, what I've learned mostly is that everyone that's coming to their mat or to class, they're coming for their own reasons. And the basis or the seed, the nucleus of that reason is, we can call it happiness. We could also call it connection to self. Whether it be, I want to connect with people, or I want to connect to a practice, or I want to find a partner, or I want to find a teacher. It's somewhere it's that. So that can be on any level. And I think that I've come to see that it can be on any level, and I have had no judgment as to what that level is. If it is to come and I want to be more in shape, and I want to have a smaller back end, you know, or look good in, you know, yoga clothes, whatever it might be the motivation, what I find is the seed of yoga, when it's watered and when it gets that sunshine, will sprout differently in each person. But if they never showed up to begin with, there would never be a chance of them planting that seed in their garden. And so I've never had any judgment as to why someone comes, or I've witnessed over so many years that everyone's journey is so different, and that journey can be to go so deep in their body, so deep in their transformation, so deep into discovering, unfolding, transforming their trauma. And it can also just stay more on a superficial level. And it's their journey. It's their journey that I feel that I've had the honor to witness, and to hopefully be some kind of mirror or reflection of love for them to see themselves. My teacher was like that. And so I was so, like, I feel so blessed that I had a teacher like that, who was just a mirror, rather than a dictator. Like, I never felt like I'm here to tell you how to be or how to practice. And for so many years, like having a studio, we would see people come, like so into it for so long, and then gone, you know, gone for 6 months, gone for 6 years. And we just kept the door open, and it was just a revolving door where people would come and go with what they needed, and change teachers, change classes. And sometimes people would walk down the hall and they'd kind of like skirt by me because they weren't coming to my class anymore and they were going to someone else's class. And then I didn't care. I was like, hi, how you doing? It's like, you know, each to their own. So I think for sure, if we come back to the body, you know, when we do teacher training program, we get into so much, right, about anatomy and whatnot. But the fascia is the connective tissue. That's like, if you can imagine cellophane or saran wrap around every single organ, every single joint, every single thing inside of you, that's fascia. And fascia holds memory. So you can hold that trauma in your body for a long period of time. So the unwinding of that fascia and the release of that fascia and those memories starting to bubble up can take some time for that to happen. And maybe sometimes it doesn't happen for somebody in this lifetime. It will happen in another lifetime. But when it starts to release, then it becomes a very powerful time, I think, for people to transform that. You know, and it's a very powerful practice and it's very courageous to be able to observe that trauma and be willing to see that as the observer, you're far more powerful than that trauma. And trauma comes and trauma goes, but the observer, what we learn in yoga and what we teach in yoga and what I've come to understand, is the observer, which is the self with a capital S, is constant and unchanging, and is the observer of all of our experiences. And so in that case, more powerful than the trauma itself. It might take a little time for a person to come to that understanding, but any process where they begin to look at that and be able to purify that is very, very powerful.
Beautiful. I had practiced Ashtanga often with yourself and your partner as well, Rod, and I really appreciated the at the beginning of every practice, you would typically set an intention or say a prayer, and that really set the tone for the experience. And the experience within the setting of a studio, it's a collective one. So it's like whatever is coming up, it's going to wash over every single one of us. It's like we create this container as a group through which everything starts to kind of bubble up. And so we have the opportunity then to feel it or not. And you're right, that's kind of a choice that each one of us makes. But I remember, and I did the training at Downward as well, and I practiced Ashtanga for probably like 2.5 years. And my body is the type where, because of my gymnastics background, it's quite strong and very limber, so I could get into all sorts of fun shapes and explore my physicality in lots of playful ways. But I also started to sustain injuries. And I have to say that a lot of those injuries that came up, because I was really interested in what was happening in my body and the feedback that I was getting, was almost things that have been lodged in there in those particular points. Shoulders came up for me a lot. And incidentally, when we had traveled to Bali and we worked with a Balinese healer, and he had done the clearing on me, what came up after the session with the Balinese healer was, it looked like a handprint. I have a picture of it somewhere that I kept, but there were bruise marks, and it looked literally like a hand on my shoulder. And I looked at it the next day, and it started to get more bruisey in the color for a few days. And I called back the Balinese healer, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know. But when we came back from Bali, these things sort of open up, and oftentimes we don't exactly know what's happening or the reason for it. But because I had a really curious, open mind, like, what could be coming up? Why is it on my shoulder? Why does it look like a hand? Why am I bruised on this part of my body after this session with this Balinese healer? I went back into class and I taught a few classes, and the students kind of asked me about what was going on, because it was very apparent, the mark there. And a few of them said, like, I can't believe that happened to you. Like, you should have complained. And I'm like, no, something's coming up. This is my body trying to communicate something to me. And sure enough, I learned of this shortly after, because I kind of put the question out there. And then the universe responds. The universe, through synchronicity, it starts to send messages as far as what could be the reason. But this is close to the heart chakra. And I know that not only within this lifetime, but I'm sure in previous lifetimes, there's been trauma of being held in ways that was not appropriate. And this is a theme that has also played out in my personal life quite a few times. And but the way it bubbled up at that time, I just also, going into Bali is where we conceived Sophie, our first child together, Jay and I. There was a lot of clearing that was happening in order for this incoming soul to manifest herself into our lives. And we had actually had issues conceiving. And that's why we went to Bali for a month. We just took the time off. But through that clearing, through that process, through that realization, we have this beautiful, spunky, spicy soul in our life right now. But this is the magic. This is the magic of life that I really feel and hope that through these conversations, we can start to open ourselves up to more and more, because the universe communicates with us in such beautiful, magnificent, subtle ways. that we just have to kind of fine-tune how we listen, what we are paying attention to, how we perceive that information. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was, that could have been seen as, oh no, he put this on me and shame on him. Like, I can't believe he did that to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's work through each other in order to get these lessons and get these sort of tidbits of information coming forth.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And that's a wonderful description and a wonderful process of looking at things from the inside out rather than the outside in. Someone did that to me, and then the blame, and, rather than looking and seeing what's arising from within and clearing out from within to without.
Mm-hmm. Who have been the most impactful teachers in your life, Misha?
Well, definitely, I would say, my first guru, because that paved the way for me to see the world in a way that made sense to my spiritual side, my spiritual heart. And I think before that, I felt a little bit lost as to what am I doing here? And so that foundation, it was very foundational for me to be in India at that time, although my family and my parents thought I was nuts and wanted me to just stay in Toronto and be a doctor or a lawyer. They had a really hard time with it. And because I had a lot of fire in my chart, I pushed my way and I said, nobody was going to stop me, literally. So that was challenging, to say the least, but I still went ahead and did that. And then, I would say he's been kind of the main teacher for me. And although when I left the ashram and I didn't go back in 2000, and some things happened, I never felt like I would say goodbye to all of those years and all of those teachings, although maybe he wasn't going to be the teacher for me anymore. I've never stopped being grateful for every single moment and all that I received from him. And along the way, I would just say those teachers that came in that had similar qualities, because once you have a teacher who's able to mirror your own greatness to you, then the bar is set pretty high. And who isn't sitting in ego, isn't sitting in separation, isn't sitting in I'm higher than you, who's constantly saying we are the same self and you have the answer within you. That's the kind of teacher I then wanted to be. And those were the kinds of teachers that I wanted to be around. And I ended up having a very sort of strong, like, I don't know what it's called, a censor to anybody who was like in their ego or really wanted to do this sort of superior, inferior kind of dance. I would be out of there pretty quickly. So the bar was set pretty high in terms of anybody that I wanted to study with. And certainly in terms of asana, like the actual yoga practice, I think Ron, because of his gentleness, his information and his gentleness and his information that came from his own body. When I met him, he was very much into the practice, he still is, in his own body. And then being able to share that in a non-forceful way. And then above and beyond that, my very dear friend, my late dear friend, Matthias Ratti, Chuck Miller and Matthias Ratti are two teachers from California that came to Toronto a lot to teach at the studio. And then Mati and I became very, very good friends. And she became a very powerful asana teacher for me at that time.
I remember when I heard word of her passing, I swear it made me think right away of Dr. Hawkins is Jason's mentor. And he said, once somebody reaches a certain level of consciousness in the 600s, they can decide whether their soul checks out or stays. And I remember because her passing was so abrupt, and I don't think she was sick or there was anything going on from what I learned. I remember at that moment, I'm like, she decided to check out. She decided to go. She had reached that level of consciousness, and she was given a choice, and she made that choice.
Well, I have a lot to say about the night she passed, and then also I've spoken to her since through my psychic. But the night she passed, we were so connected, and we would Skype all the time. And in fact, she helped me continue Downward Dog all the times when I was like, she helped me. She helped, me to kind of focus and look at different things. And so we would Skype a lot of the time. But I have a crazy story. So the night she passed, and I worked it out that it was the time that she passed, because I found out exactly the time she passed in terms she was in Japan and I was in Toronto. And our bedroom was upstairs, and downstairs is the office. It was right at the bottom of the stairs. And I must have left my laptop open. However, with laptops, they have locks, like they shut down and you have to type in your code, right, to open it back up again. So middle of the night, I got up to go to the washroom. So I was upstairs, just passing over the stairways that go down, and I hear a man's voice. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a man in the house. Oh my God, what's going on? What's going on? And all of a sudden, I'm drawn downstairs, which isn't normal. Usually they're like, there's somebody in the house. But I'm drawn downstairs because all of a sudden the man's voice is very, very familiar. So there's two different psychics that we've seen for many, many years. And one's name is John. And I realized it was John's voice. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I went down to my computer, and it was one of my sessions with John, one of the recordings with him playing. Which, did my cat step, my cat sleeps with me. So did my cat step on my computer? Does my cat know the code to open the computer, to then click on iTunes, which wasn't even open because all my recordings were in iTunes? And so I listened to the section of what he said, and I was like, okay. And then I looked at the date, and I was like, okay, oh my God, this is crazy. I have to remember this and look at it and listen to it a little bit more carefully the next morning. And wow. So she visited me. And she visited me, and she told me why she left. And then I had a chance, later as well, to actually speak with her through another psychic, which was very healing for me.
Wow. Is this John Pataya by chance?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Small world. Wow. How do you spell her name?
Mati, M-A-T-Y.
M-A-T-Y.
Right. R-A-T-Y.
Okay. Interesting. It just made me think of Planet Matea. As far as your tools as a yoga teacher, as a body worker, what are some of the tools that you've gained to be able to navigate life? What are some of your power tools, your most important tools, superpowers?
Well, thankfully, meditation started so young for me. And no matter, even when I took up Ashtanga and a very strong, asana practice, I was never one of those yoginis that practiced at 5 a.m. Ashtanga. The thought of getting up and moving my body like that at 5 a.m. was just there's no way. Because meditation just always has to be first. Meditation and pranayama has to be first. And it was always just the thing that set my mood, set the day, set everything, so that is direct connection to source is the greatest tool. And then, through that practice, I think coming to understand once again that as a meditator, you're observing the mind, but then you observe yourself observing the mind. And then you come to understand that you are the self meditating on the self. And so what is that self? And I think that's probably been one of the greatest tools, because again, back to that, that self underlines all that is. It's the substratum of all existence. It's the basis of prana, of energy, of your breath, of the source of the universe. It's the very, animation of all things. It is the source. So when we come to start to identify with ourselves as that more in meditation, then we start to see everything else, as we call it in Sanskrit, Maya. So the Maya is the illusion, and the illusion is really just everything that changes. And that illusion can be wonderful, and that illusion can be not so wonderful, but it's still Maya. It's that which changes is considered to be Maya. And so we get caught, we get caught in it, we get caught in it, we get caught in it, and meditation goes, oh yeah, right. Because if it was so real, how come it's not here right now? And how come it's not here right now? And how come it's not right here? But it was here yesterday in my mind. And I'm not really sure if it'll be here tomorrow in my mind. So how is that real? So I think the greatest tool, one of the greatest tools I've had through the practice of meditation, I'm so grateful for, is the ability to discern and discriminate. In India, we call it between the real and the unreal, which is a bit different than how we look at the things in the West. That which is real is that which is unchanging. That which is unreal is that which changes. And so it's a little bit different. People say, oh, the only thing that's constant is that things change, or there's that sort of phrase. And I'm like, wait, it's not complete. wait, I want to complete that, So the thing that we can count on, yes, is that all things change. But the thing that is real is the unchanging seer and the unchanging knower and the unchanging observer of all that changes. And I think without the practice of meditation, it's so easy. I mean, even with meditation, we watch ourselves getting identified all throughout our days with the things that change. And we're caught, like, this is going to happen. This is real. This is, this is the truth. This is the truth. But if it was the truth, why wasn't it there 5 years ago? Why wasn't it there 10 years ago? Why wasn't it there yesterday? And so if you say, for example, if you get into the Yoga Sutras, the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which is a big classical text in yoga. I love Patanjali. I studied it so much because he's so practical. He's like the scientists in the laboratory, and under the microscope, he's got the human mind. It's the human mind. It's all of our minds. It doesn't matter what culture we're from. And so he's very practical and pragmatic, but he also gives, techniques and different ways to approach it. But he's constantly making us aware of the mind that is klishta or aklishta. It's helpful, the thoughts are helpful or unhelpful. So which way do you want to go?
Yeah. How has yoga helped you? Because you've been a part of the yoga community. You've been within the yoga community for a lot longer than I have. I've been in it for, like I said, probably 14, 15 years. And even within our yoga community, there's a big divide. There's a big rift. And so when 2020 came along and shook everything up, it was my wish that the yoga community would kind of be in sync, would be in tune with being able to just see things clearly. And I feel like we're still in a fog right now. And as far as being able to utilize all these tools that we've learned within our yoga practice, it's the philosophy, it's the psychology, but it's also all of it embodied in how we actually then use that and utilize that within our everyday to be able to see things clearly as they are. But yet there's such a big divide in the yoga community. And so this practice that is there to be able to help us, like you said, to be able to discern truth from falsehood. How come it works and at times, and it doesn't work at other times, or it works for some people or not for other people? Where do you see how things can kind of go amiss sometimes?
I just think it comes back to that first statement that I've just seen for so many years. We don't know at what level somebody is coming into the physical practice. And we could all equally say the physical practice makes us connect with our body, feel the energy, open the energy, connect with our breath, and feel better. And it can be that statement, period, end of statement. For a lot of people, I feel better, I feel really good. Now I'm going to go out and have a coffee with friends. You know, generally what I do feel is that there is, if you stay with the practice, there is a kind of evolution that happens in your body and in your mind, and in, you know, what you start to, the changes in your diet, you know, the changes in what you drink, and the changes in your company. These things begin to evolve. And I certainly see that as people dive into like teacher training, for example. I really noticed that you know, they've wanted to go in deeper, and so they've gone deeper into their practice. But everyone is evolving differently at different, I don't want to say there's a hierarchy, because there isn't. We're all one being, but we've all come from maybe different places. We've had different lifetimes, if you believe in karma and reincarnation, which I do. So we've come to the practice from a different place or a different state of awareness. And so if any awareness dawns in a person practicing yoga, it's great. And it can be many, many different degrees of that awareness dawning. So again, that awareness can be, I now have a healthier body and I'm going to eat better. And that awareness can be, I have a healthier body, I'm going to eat better, I'm going to, you know, change my diet. Oh, I'm going to change my company. Oh, I'm going to change my partner. I'm going to change my job. I'm going to change where I live. You know what I mean? So there's an expansion and an evolution on anything, right? So there's just different degrees, I would say, different degrees. I would say the time that we're in right now, and the way that I see it, is probably the divide that we're seeing a little bit is holding on to the past and that idea of things going back to the way they were, and the opposite of really embracing the newness of what's yet to come. And it's easy. We're also nostalgic, and it's easy to want to hold on. And in that holding on, then there is, I think Maya has a certain grip. Maya has a certain grip. And in the letting go, that Maya doesn't have the grip anymore. And so we can start to take a step back and see things a little bit clearer. And when we step back, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, spiritual practice. The awakening that happens in each of us, the things that you see in yourself, the things that you see in you know, because the microcosm, macrocosm, like my teacher, when I first went to India, he said, there is no world. I was like, what? Everything you learned is a lie, he said. I went, what? I was like, I like this teacher. So that's me. You know, that's how I approach spirituality, is like, let's go for this, right? But there is no world. And I was like, well, what does he mean by that? You know, meaning there is nothing separate from you. Everything that you see on the outside is happening inside of you. The universe exists inside of you, not you as a separate being existing inside of the universe. So it's a very different way of looking at it. So when we start to kind of move that around, then the tool, you're asking about tools, the tools are all in here. The tools are all within us. They're within us to connect with our higher self, our guides, our guardians, our ascended masters, the angels, the angelic realm, whatever, because it's all there. That connection is all there. It's a turning of the attention. We turn the attention out into the external world, or turn the attention inside to the internal landscape that's within. All of the beauty and all of the answers is within. So it's that, I think it's the turning back and learning the practices that help us to connect with who we truly are. And of course, having a good teacher, I think, is very helpful for that. Have been, for me anyways, essential. And yeah, I think there's just many, many different ways that we are being purified right now. Our expectations of other people, our expectations of community, our expectations of certain people in our lives that maybe we thought we were in line with or aligned with, and were aligned with us. And I find this year to be a big year of really letting go and embracing your own movement, your own pathway forward. And as we do that, as you and I and Jason, as we've been connecting, as we do that, there's beautiful surprises that happen as we redefine what community is. We redefine, what it is that we want to see in our future, on the planet as well.
Marla, you know what I've been thinking about, especially these past couple of years, what's come up for me a lot, and I would turn to Jay, and he did a yoga training too, just to dive deeper into the philosophy of the practice because he was interested in it. But I'm going to share the screen. So pratyahara specifically, and I know it's defined oftentimes as withdrawing the senses, but how I've been seeing it, or understanding it more so, is it's actually Patanjali was also speaking to the fact that we need to be very selective as far as what we allow through our sensory gateways. We need to be really mindful of what it is that we're allowing into our beingness, because it's ultimately going to affect us on some sort of level. And I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit on that, because I feel like even with what's going on right now, it's amplifying all that ever has been, not just within our lifetime, but I feel like, generations after generations, we represent that our ancestors have experienced as well. So with this stirring of the pot that's happening and everything that's rising to the surface, for us to be able to see that much more clearly, with regards to the media, news, the different sort of ways of information or topics or movements that are coming up, I feel like it's such an important time to actually practice pratyahara and be really mindful of what it is that we actually allow in, not just, through the sensory gate, so what it is that we consume on all sorts of levels. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally agree with that. I think that there's an inner knowing and an inner barometer that since the beginning of these things that we call cell phones and computers, being a little bit older, I've kind of seen, I remember, getting my first PC, the desktop PC, this big clunky thing. And it was like, what's the internet? And then like later on when Skype came to be, I swear to God, there was an entire year where I refuted that you could actually see somebody, like call somebody and see somebody, So I just, technology, like everything, has its positives and has its negatives. But one main thing that it does is it takes us out of ourselves, right? It takes us into the changing world, which we'll call Maya. And so what happens is that we begin to, and then we're like, I'll include myself in that, addicted to this, right? Like this thing, which, becomes like your new best friend. How many people wake up in the morning, instead of like hugging their partner or their cat or their dog or whatever, take their phone first, right? So it's like a replacement, And so we've externalized so much. And so we've lost that barometer. Like, what resonates here? What feels true for you? You hear something does that feel true for you? Does that resonate for you? What kind of mood does that put you in? You know, and I believe really there's love or fear. There's love or fear, and there's really no in between. So again, it's that like managing that inside of yourself. Is this path of thinking, you know, taking me in the fear mode, or is it taking me in, you know, a loving, happy, embracing mode? And that discernment is really difficult. I mean, I've certainly had my difficulties with that, particularly last November when I started to become aware of a few things. And then you sort of see, you know, you see that you can go down any rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole can take you somewhere wonderful, or that rabbit hole can take you somewhere that you just keep going and going and going, and it becomes a negative spiral. So actually making the choice to turn the attention away from fear and away from that particular rabbit hole, I believe takes a lot of courage and a lot of going against the grain, and the putting of the phone down and the shutting off of the mainstream media and I've made the choice, like actually many years ago, but now full time, to be in nature, because to me, nature's God. Nature is truly is beingness at its finest, just beingness, magnificence at its finest, just magnificent beingness, radiating with no ego, no separation, no hierarchy. And I realized that was where my soul was calling me to some time ago. And I'm in a remote place, and there were some years ago, maybe around 6 years ago, I mean, we've had this home for 8 years, where I realized that I loved nature and animals and mammals more than I loved human beings. And so I was just like, want to spend the last years of my life, you know, being with these dudes and, you know, being the caretaker of this land. And because I am, and being a guest in the jungle. When you live in the jungle, you are a guest in the jungle. If you don't take care of your house in some way, the jungle will eat your house, and it will eat you too. So we are a guest here with reverence, and every day we bow down to that which just resonates its own innate beauty, that when you're around it, I probably could venture to say most human beings love being in nature, and feel very calm and feel very happy when they're in nature. And part of that is that mirror that we get reflected back to us of our own beingness inside. And so it's that beingness which I feel a lot of people have lost track of. And certainly the lockdowns and being inside and not being in nature, so then now you're inside and even more in this sort of realm, right, which can also have its benefits, right? Study, connection, learning online. There's wonderful benefits of that as well. But there, to me, in my life at this time, there's no greater benefit than pure oxygen, pure water, nature, breathing fresh air, and just tuning inside to the inner barometer that knows the truth.
Speaking of being with God, one of the other things that you guys would host oftentimes at Downward Dog is kirtan. Can you tell us a little bit for the audience who hasn't partaken in this sort of practice, bhakti practice, what it's about and what's the significance of it?
Sure. So kirtan means call and response chanting. It goes back to the bhakti movement. Bhakti means devotion. Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion. And it goes back to the calling of God's name, really, in Sanskrit or in Hindi. And it's the repetition of it. It's like if we were just to sit and whatever name you want to use, the divine, great spirit, great holy mother, whatever, and you were just to chant that over and over again. And I'm going to chant it, and then you're going to chant it back to me. And so we're going to celebrate it. So we're going to keep celebrating it over and over again. And as we celebrate it over and over again, which is basically in many, many different ways, saying, divine, divine, divine mother, divine grace, divine being, divine, over and over again, back and forth, it ramps up and becomes kind of ecstatic, you know? And so there is this beautiful arc that happens of starting sort of slow and inside and devotional, and it gets faster and faster, and it becomes quite ecstatic, sometimes even towards dancing. I myself would get up and dance. And then it kind of, winds back down, and we take it back inside. And I mean, traditionally, kirtan can be all night long in India. It can just go on, and then different people come in and change whoever's leading. And then, people just keep singing, and you just become so happy. And honestly, my favorite times of doing kirtan in Toronto was in the winter. And everyone would walk in, and they have this look on their face like, oh my God, And then you just see that look change. And then by the end, like nobody wanted to leave. Everyone just hung out and hugged each other. And everyone was just in that space of love. And it was just such a high, high vibe. And mostly what I loved about it too was, even though it looked like, we were a band here performing, it wasn't. We were all a band. We were the band together. We're singing, you're singing back, we're singing together. Sometimes there'd be times when we would sing together. And so we're all just singing together, and we're all just celebrating together. And I liked that, because I felt like I wanted something like a practice like that, where again, we could just allow that separation to dissolve. And I found very, very much like the ancient practices of singing and dancing, they're all through, ancient tribes, all through our lifetimes, for thousands of years, all cultures and all remote places celebrated through song and through dance and through coming together as a community in that way. I find music and dance so completely transformative. Doesn't matter what mood I'm in, I start to sing and that mood changes. I start to move my body and that mood changes. And time again, it's always such a great reminder of something actually so simple. There's the tool. So simple and so easy to do. And the thing about kirtan also that I would say at the beginning is, you don't have to be a singer. You don't have to have a good voice. Just sing. Open your heart and sing. And even if you forget the words or you don't get them right, just sing something, close or true to your heart, right? Because if you sing from your heart, it doesn't matter what language you sing in. It's all just with that intention.
Beautiful. I, with our trauma series that we're hosting now, exactly what you said, these ancient cultures have incorporated song and dance, and that's actually been found to be really instrumental in healing trauma. So there's good reason as to why these ancient cultures have been, as a community, involved in song and dance throughout history. And I wanted to play a clip of this, if that's okay with you.
Sure. I'm fascinated. hard to get that sound to come through.
You know, it was such a beautiful experience. I've attended your events. They're so powerful. To get and to give yourself the permission, like you said, to just voice, like allow your voice to come through, regardless if you're getting any of the wording right or not, is kind of irrelevant as long as you're allowing yourself, you're giving yourself permission for the voice just to come out. It's and then if you're able to just let your body move in the way that music wants to move it, like those are such powerful ways to be able to connect with your spirit. And yeah, it's one that can't even be conveyed until you have the experience. And then there's an opening. There's cracks that start to happen and take place, and through those cracks, it's like this brighter light starts to shine through, and they're powerful. They're pretty powerful.
Yeah, I was very, very blessed to have an amazing band in Toronto. Torontonians, you know, Toronto is a place with great musicians. And so I always felt so honored that they would play with us. And it made me rise up to a certain kind of level. And leading kirtan was actually quite difficult for me. I'm like very shy kind of singer, more internal kind of singer. And you have to hold the space and you have to guide the band. There's a lot going on. You have to play both parts. So I'm playing the call and the response, you know, playing an instrument and singing. And so, you know, it was challenging to hold the space. And when I first started to do kirtan, I would just kind of like drift off somewhere. And I was like, oh, I better hold it together. And I had to like really ground myself because it was always a practice that made me transcend. So I had to really come into my body and ground myself, which is actually what asana and yoga practice did for me, because I was just so spacey and out there, as it brought me in to my physical body. But it was always so challenging, and I never knew what would happen. That was the beauty of kirtan. That is the beauty of kirtan, is it's a special moment depending on who comes and, you know, and the energy of the people. And I learned so much because sometimes, you know, I'd have a big band and then there just would be like a small group that came. It was the middle of a snowstorm, right? So sometimes like the band is almost bigger than the people coming, right? So it'd be like, you know, you have this like big energy, but then the energy that was coming back was not as big. And I would, like, when I first started, I would just like keep going, you know, like I wouldn't really listen or see what was going on. You know, it's a relationship, right? And you see yourself. And then you see like it's not happening. You know, I'm trying to like get the energy going into this ecstatic place. It's not happening. It's not happening. And then so at first it took me a while to see that it wasn't happening. It was like, oh, okay, let's just bring this down and make this really mellow. So as time went on, it was easier for me to sort of gauge and have less of an agenda. And I think that's really just also the same key of teaching yoga, right? Like you come in and you have a certain class plan. Yeah. It's like you have a class plan, but you know, whoever shows up, they're your class plan. Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to also play a clip here because you're a beautiful dancer as well, and wanted to share this with the audience too. And everything that I'm sharing here, all these sites, these are your handles, which I'll be posting for everyone at the bottom of this video.
The music might not be translating with the image.
Tell me a little bit more, Miksha. Meenakshi, sorry.
It's just the music, the delay of the music maybe isn't translating so much with the movement just through this medium. So it might not connect so much with the actual dance itself if it looks like it's a bit off.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jaya Bhagavati Devi Namo Bharati Jaya Bhagavati Devi Namo Bharati Jaya Bhagavati Devi Namo Bharati Jaya Papa Vinashini Bahupala Deva Jaya Papa Vinashini Bahupala Deva Namo Bharati Jaya Bhagavati Devi Namo Bharati Jaya Bhagavati Devi Namo
Beautiful. So that's on your grounds in Costa Rica.
Yeah, it's very difficult to dance on grass.
Well, you did an awesome job. Okay, I wanted to, if there's anything else you want to share, Meenakshi. I'm so used to calling you Marla, so I have to catch myself and keep saying Meenakshi. But if there's anything else you want to share.
Well, just to say thank you for having me and for sharing your own journey and your own personal experience. It's just been really, really, really wonderful to reconnect with you. When I think about you at the studio and all the times that you came, and I know I said this to you, living in a very busy city where people would drop in quickly to a class and leave really quickly, including sometimes us, our teachers, we often didn't get a chance to really just really connect, like really have long talks and really connect and get to know the students, other than just what we saw, you know, initially in your energy. And your energy was always so loving and so sweet and so you just radiated that. And whenever I saw you, I just always felt like, oh, Taya is here. And so I thank you for coming for so many years and being so open and then pursuing it yourself as a teacher. I can see that our paths, as they've come together and they've crossed over at this time, is very meaningful, whoever we are connecting with at this time. And I feel like we're at a precipice. We're at a precipice, and those people that are journeying in this direction together are very, very special and very. I think we're forming. You were talking about community. We're forming our communities, our new communities right now. And they're powerful and they're potent and they're important. And I just see that that we can let go of the old models and the older expectations that we might have had of certain people or certain communities or even certain behaviors. Because I see right now, rather than being nostalgic about what was, which never gets me anywhere, that's for sure. I would rather just embrace what is and kind of just dig into and dive into our new channels, our new pathways that are taking each of us to where we need to be. Earlier, before we started our conversation and we went to record, we were talking a little bit about how challenging it is for us to let go of maybe our expectations or what we want from certain people or what we hope for from certain people to see or to believe or behave in a certain way. And I'll share again what I've been finding in myself is I've been seeing this very old, almost ancestral pattern, right? From ancestors, from my culture, from my family history, you know, going back and back, and being a woman, of being a caretaker. And that there's an archetype, you know, there's an archetype that that I see in my own life of, you know, being the savior and being the caretaker. And that's a really challenging one to let go of, or to be aware of, first of all, and then to transform, and to really step into autonomy and sovereignty in yourself, but also, for me, I have to remind myself that also everyone is in their sovereignty. Whatever choice they make, it is their sovereign choice to make it. And who am I to say it should be this way or that way? And everyone is moving and evolving for their own greater good and for their own evolution. And never before, if I ever thought I had some idea that I could help or save or change someone, I certainly am starting to see now that it isn't the case. And what I find in beginning to see it and letting go of it, the jewel that I'm finding, is it's really opening up more space inside of me just to move into that sovereignty and my own direction more myself. Because I can see that it did, there was a certain amount of energy that I really put into that model of myself, that archetype, that took a certain amount of energy, emotional and mental energy, that is now starting to get freed up.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. And that's a perfect segue into this Shanti prayer that we're going to play at the end. We're going to play it in full at the end of this video. Can you preface that? Can you give us a little bit more insight into that?
Yeah, this album, Salutations, is the first album that I recorded with Ron. And it came at a time after we first got together, and Ron's father had just passed away, and then my father got sick, and then 9 months later my father passed away. But before he got sick, he had gifted me with a little bit of money to put towards, he thought, a down payment of a house. Of course, I used it to record an album. So my first album I did in a studio in the Himalayas by a river, and it was my friend's, you know, recording studio. So this was a professional studio, and I had never done anything like this. Ron, being an ex-musician, knew some great, you know, musician people, and I think he had recorded in the studio before, I can't remember. But in us getting together, we just wrote so much music, like so much music. And this album, Salutations, you know, just basically just came out of us. It just burst out of us. The last song on the CD is a traditional prayer, one of the many prayers of peace. But it's basically, you know, wishing peace and happiness for all beings in all dimensions, for all of the elements, for the sun, for the earth, for the sky. May we find peace in our minds. May we find peace in our hearts. That peace is actually, you know, within us. And if we are able to remove some of those coverings and those veils, we'll be able to actually see that and then live in that and then share in that. That's a very extended version of this Sanskrit prayer.
Beautiful. With that, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom, and also I feel like you and I have bonded this past little while for sure, and I'm really grateful for our connection. It means a lot to me, and I thank you for being here, and everyone here can enjoy the song. Much love to you all.
Much love. Thank you.
And we'll clip it there, and then we'll play the song in full. That was really great, Marla. I really think that's beautiful.
I hope it's okay.
No, it was more than okay. It was perfect. It was what it needs to be at this time. And yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I'm sure, you know, we can probably do this again in a couple of months and be in a completely different place, because I feel like things are just moving at such a rapid such a rapid pace right now, and even how we're evolving and we're shifting and what it's calling within us, and that's constantly changing right now too.
I think I would be going through a lot of similar things that you're going through right now, Taya, if I was there. Because I mean, all the work that you're doing is huge and amazing, but there still is the atmosphere around you, the vibration of the country. And that would be, you know, very difficult for me to deal with right now. So bravo to you and your courage and your bravery to be there, because I think that is also an added layer of things that energies you're having to sift through, let alone.
You're frozen. Can you hear me? I've lost you here for a moment. Can you hear me? Oh, interesting. I saw you. I can see your messages. Your image is frozen, but I can read your messages at the bottom, but I can't hear you at all. Okay, you can. Yeah, that is strange. I'm so glad we got the full footage, because I feel like maybe Wi-Fi has gone a little wonky. Yeah, probably, or mine, who knows. We're also outside of the town, so sometimes our Wi-Fi is questionable too. Yeah, you're still frozen, but I can only see the text that you're sending me. Yeah, we've thought about it, and we'll sit with it some more, but it feels really appropriate to be here right now, and I really we're honoring that. I really feel like Spirit wants us here right now. Yeah, I think so too. I'm checking in. I check in often, and I wait to hear for answers and look for synchronicities, but this feels like where we need to be right now, for whatever reason. So we'll see if that shifts and changes. We know we can always catch, you know, it's costly, but people are doing it, paying for a private plane to fly out. So even if we get a couple of more people, that's an option too. But there's options. I kind of put it into the divine spirit right now, just like guide me as you need me, and I'll follow through. Yeah. Isn't it strange? Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that was the last straw. Watu was kind of, I know she was hoping that we'd be there because she knew that we would be helping them out. But I think when I mentioned that we couldn't get across, and then we decided that we wouldn't get on a plane right now, that was the last straw. But yeah, that's a hard one, but the timing of it will work out when it's meant to be. Yeah, I agree for sure. Okay, love you, Marla. Jay's gonna just prepare for his round table. He's he started another platform to follow your oath. It's kind of encouraging professionals to check what their oath is, what they signed up for, and the reason why, and to abide by that at this time. So he's going to be talking to an MD, a police officer, a nurse, and a few naturopathic doctors that they've rallied together to speak on that. So yeah, it feels like we have to do something, right? That's where we are right now. So that's our contribution. That's what we're doing and focusing our attention on. I love you. Give Ron a big, massive hug for me. And maybe like 2 kisses on each cheek and a forehead, so 3 kisses. And then please, I love you so much.